to WRPB and WRPB Studios. So it was important enough for me to bring back a gentleman in an industry that, I mean, most industries you have to really be picky about who you have and who you bring to your place. Well, with me is Mike from Sailfish Solar. You were on a little over a year ago, I would think.
Hmm.
And I hate to say it this way, but most people look at your industry like used car salespeople, and it's so important that people use the right people
Hmm.
because there are so many out there doing the wrong things, from what I hear, and that's why it was important enough to bring you guys back.
Okay.
So, how long you guys been around?
I've been in the solar industry for 17 years.
Wow.
So we've been here since before the market really even existed in the state of Florida. And we knew, as we put policies in place and as we kind of built a marketplace, a foundation of a marketplace, we knew that a time would come when sales would start to take over, actual the process of actually building solar.
Right.
We're in the business of building solar, right? There is a certain subset of salespeople that are out there to make a buck, quite frankly, and those are the ones that are kind of giving the industry the bad
Right.
name that you're saying.
I get that.
The good news is, though, in 5 years from now, just like 10 years ago they didn't exist, in 5 years from now they won't exist either.
Right. Well, and I discuss this all the time. Almost every business I've ever known is cyclical.
Hmm.
Okay, and changes come about, and it's the ones that understand their industry and is not about instant gratification that stick it out and make the money.
Hmm.
Um, you've been around a long time. I'm sure there were times that you maybe thought, oh, let's just not work it. I know here, when I started this industry, because this industry didn't exist, I got, don't be stupid, get a real job, it's a pipe dream. But I stuck it out. And I knew what I was going to do, and I had a plan. You guys are in that same position. You go through the good, you go through the bad, but you stick it out because you know what you're doing,
Right.
and you want to get it done. So the questions that I have for you, which are questions that most people have or don't know, is that when I want to get solar in my home, I originally thought, all right, well, I'll put a panel up facing east. So I know there's two issues with that.
Hmm.
Okay, the panels shouldn't. The best place is not east, correct?
That would be the second best. South is always going to be the best, and I
Okay.
would say west would be number two, and east would be number three, actually.
Okay, so why is south a better location?
Well, in the simplest possible form, is because the sun is south of us.
Oh, okay. So for me, I was thinking, well, you know what? If it comes up on the east and sets on the west, south probably gets the sun more than anything else.
For sure.
And then we talk about putting up a solar panel, but it doesn't work that way. If I want to run my radio, I'll put up a solar panel, right? There's a distinct science to solar, correct?
Very distinct, yeah.
Okay.
So the answer is no. You can't really power individual appliances. There was a time, when solar started, it would be called a DC connection, to where you could basically run the power directly to, a particular appliance. An example of that still exists today are like off grid, like a farm that has a pump, you know what I mean, or the street lights you see on the side. That's a DC
Right.
connection. But for the most part, the way solar works in your house, it's AC, since your house runs off of AC. And so the photons will come in, they'll hit the solar panel, and they'll actually be converted or inverted into AC power, and that's what you use at your house. So we're going to feed into the entire house, not necessarily just one in particular appliance.
Well, so my question is, I have a 3-2 refrigerator, washer, and dryer. How do you? I know I'm going to call you and say, hey, I'm thinking about getting solar, but I don't know what I need.
Hmm.
So you come, you make an appointment, you come, and then how do you decipher like how many panels should be?
Well, it's all related to your consumption, right? So that's what we really want to see, is the total consumption of the house. Because again, the solar system is going to power the entire house. So what we need to see is what is the total power consumption in the entire house. You would find that on your utility bill, right? Your FP&L bill, your Duke bill, or whatever it is.
Okay.
And it'll show you the number of kilowatt hours per month that you're actually burning. And that's the number that we're trying to replace with solar power.
So I don't think it's as simple as people might think. It's not just an issue of putting solar panels on the roof. It's got to come into the house and go somewhere. So where does it go?
Well, specifically, it will tap right into your main feed, into your meter, right? So
Okay.
your breaker at the house, your breaker panel at the house, and it'll go in between the breaker panel and the FP&L meter. So
Okay. How does it know when to go from FP&L to solar? And I know these are stupid questions I'm asking, but I'm sure they're simple questions for you, but not for us guys.
yeah,
Like, because there's got to be a way to know when we've used all the power that the solar panels are going to give us, and we need more, which would then come from FP&L.
correct. Yeah.
Okay, how do we know that?
So the equipment itself is going to know. And there are many times throughout the course of a given day where either your house is consuming more than your solar is producing, or your solar is producing more than your house is consuming. So there really is this two-way street between your solar system and the power grid itself. So there's a policy out there called net metering. Most people are familiar with it. This is basically means we can sell excess power to the grid. You might have heard of that. People say selling power to the grid.
Yes, I heard that.
So that's what net metering is. And so what that means is if your house is consuming 4,000 watts at any given moment and your system is producing 6,000 watts at any given moment, those extra 2,000 watts are going to be sent to the grid, and then you'll get a credit on your power bill, right, for the extra generation that you sent to the grid. Typically, when the sun goes down, you end up eating up those credits. But if you are out of town or whatever the case is, those credits can carry from day to day, week to week, and month to month. And so that's that two-way relationship between you and the power grid. And it answers your question in terms of how do they know, when do we need power when, or what power do we need when?
Well, does it comes through the panels? Is there a place that stores some of that power, or it just goes right back into the grid?
Always either to the house or to the grid. The only way you would store it is if you had a battery system, and battery systems are extremely common these days. That basically takes the place of a whole home generator. And with a battery, we would size that again to how much battery capacity you need. But in that situation, if you had a battery, first it would go to your house, then it would go to the battery, and then any excess would go to the grid.
Okay, so let's get into what people talk about, which is, and I don't want to talk about price per se, because that's got to be a variable, because you might need 2 panels, you might need 6 panels, you might need 10 panels.
Right.
And when I drive around, I see sometimes they have like 5 panels on the south side and 2 panels on the east side. Is that because there was no room on the south side? Because if you could fit them, you're going to all put them into one spot.
I'm sure, yeah, that's almost undoubtedly the case.
Okay, so they talk about, and I know we live in a world today where everything's pricey. Does it, for the normal consumer, are they going to save on their electric bill on a whole?
On the whole, so here's the thing: the savings are proportionate, right? Whether we put in 1 panel or 100 panels, the savings is still going to be, from a proportion standpoint,
Right.
the same. Your payback period for your house, for example, is going to be about 7 years. All right, so you will outlay that initial capital. You will receive that money back over utility savings over the course of 7 years. That's on equipment that's warranted to produce power for 25 years.
Okay.
Right now, we be careful with the word free, but at the end of the day, if you paid for the system and you are producing power, that is free power once it's already paid for itself.
Well, oh, I'm sorry.
The only other point that I would make is the common misconception is this is a big capital outlay and I can't afford it, and that is true. It is a capital outlay, but the part that I would encourage everyone to remember is you're spending this money anyway. Since the last time you and I since the last time you and I talked,
Right.
you spent $2,500 to the utility company. I've spent nothing to the utility company.
Okay.
That's the difference.
I think there's one benefit that I think that most people miss, and I don't know if it is a benefit, and I'm going to get that from someone who knows, which is you. So, we live in Florida, the hurricane capital of the world, and every so often, lightning strikes and hits one of their generators, or one of their whatever, and power goes out. Or we have a hurricane and power goes out. I don't think no matter what happens, the sun ever goes out. Okay? So, during the day, I will still have power.
With a battery backup system, that is correct. With a grid tied system, it is tied to the grid. So if the grid goes down, then your solar system goes down.
Okay.
With a battery system, then yes, if the grid goes down, you'll have power as long as the sun continues to rise.
So, can again correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to guess that the solar panel feeds the grid, and then the grid feeds back to you. But because you've already put into the grid what you're getting back, you don't have to pay for.
I'm sorry, what? Say
Okay,
that?
so the solar panel pulls in the whatever electric we're going to use, and it goes to the grid, and the grid feeds you. But you don't have to pay for it because you've put it back in. It's almost like
Well,
depositing and withdrawing.
Depositing and withdrawing from a credit standpoint is
Right.
correct, but don't forget the power will actually be consumed at your house first, and then only excess power is what gets sent to the grid.
Okay.
And then here's another common misconception is so people think, okay, well, if we're sending power to the grid and we're giving that person a credit for their power bill, that means the other people who don't have solar are somehow subsidizing that person's bill, right? Because they're getting it for a retail price.
Right.
But here's the part that they're missing. When those electrons leave your house, they don't go back to the nuclear power plant that's 80 miles away or 100 miles away. Those electrons simply go to the nearest point of consumption, which is your neighbor's house. So you are, in effect, powering your neighbor's house with your same electrons.
So actually, they're paying for the electrons that I'm putting back into the grid.
They're paying retail for your electrons. That's right.
Oh, so really, it's actually sounds like it's a blessing to to FP&L.
It absolutely is because
Okay.
we're addressing weak spots in their distribution, and not only that, but solar. So the big thing with utility companies is the demand, right? Is that
Right.
they have to have demand response. The reason they have that massive plant out in Indiantown, which is a combined cycle natural gas plant, it's basically like a big machine that they turn on during a couple hours during the day, and they call that the peak demand, the peak hour of time when everyone's consuming the most power. You're turning your air conditioner down, the doors are opening and shutting, we're getting dinner ready for the kids or whatever the case is. That's called peak demand. Well, guess what? During that time period is when solar is also producing almost at its very highest. So we're reducing that peak demand for the overall power grid, and you as a solar homeowner are actually benefiting your neighbors.
So will I not have what's the word I'm thinking about, like brownout style stuff in peak time?
In peaks with solar, if a brownout affects the entire grid, then
Right.
then yes, you would be affected by
Okay.
that. But as a solar house, you know what I mean, you wouldn't be contributing to the ground brownout. If anything, you would be contributing to reversing the
Okay.
brownout.
All right, and this is the toughest part. Is there any financing available when it comes to getting solar?
Oh yeah, there's a ton of financing for sure.
Okay.
You can finance directly through the solar companies, and obviously we take outside financing as well, like a HELOC or just a conventional loan. There's PACE financing, which attaches it to the property itself. In St. Lucie County, they have their own set of a program called SELF, which is for financing for folks here in the county, and they're actually expanding past the state. So yeah, there's a countless financing options, and the important part is more times than not, your finance payment is going to be less than what your utility payment is today.
Wow. And I can understand that because I know what my utility payment is, and that's. And we constantly complaining because it's constantly going up like everything else.
Sure.
So
And that's the beauty of finance. It's a fixed payment.
when I call you up and say, "Hey, I want to do solar," you come, you look at what I need, you give me a price. So I say, "All right, I'm going to do this." How long does it take to get it done?
So the entire process from start to finish,
Right.
from the minute we say go to the minute you're producing your own power, is about 90 days. We can do it faster than that, but I like to set that number as kind of a general expectation. A lot of times we'll get it done in 60 days. The construction piece, where we're actually up on your roof, is 2 days.
And lastly, because we're going to run out of time, is we live in Florida, and insurance companies are a nightmare when it comes to roofs now. Does it affect, any of that affect the roofing scenario?
So there is some misconception out there that solar, will cause problems with your insurance company.
Right.
It is true that there are some insurance companies who have issues with it, but it's also true, like you said, if solar never even entered the conversation, there are a whole lot of insurance problems in the state of
Oh,
Florida.
without a
today.
doubt. We already know
Right.
that insurance companies and this is just my opinion, insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies are destroying this whole economy. That's my opinion.
Sure.
And I'm the first to say it because I don't like my mom, I have no filter. But it's really important that people know, in my opinion, that if I was going to do this, I surely, and I don't know the difference in pricing, I surely would consider a battery backup. Is that what you call it? Because that, if I'm going to go buy a Generac, I might as well have a battery backup. Okay?
Agreed.
Because this way, no matter what happens with the grid, I'm still good for a bit.
Right.
Do they come in like in different sizes, all that stuff? Like the battery backups and stuff?
Yeah.
So if you're using whatever, 5 kilowatts, and I'm just picking it up on my head, it needs to store an additional 5 kilowatts to get through the night, I guess, right?
That's the right idea. Yep.
Not probably the wrong numbers, but the right idea.
You got it. No, that's sure. Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm thinking of how to explain to people the benefits that solar is. You can't just go by the price. You have to go for the long term. It's really, solar is not about instant gratification. Okay?
Sure.
It's financially, it's about long term and how you're going to end up benefiting.
Right.
When it comes to reselling a home that has solar, I guess if there's a loan on it, it would have to be paid off.
Potentially.
Okay. Unless the new people come in.
The new buyers could take over the loan on the solar for sure.
Okay. How long do the panels last?
Well, they're warranted to last for 25 years.
Okay.
The reality is they'll last much longer than that. That's just when the warranty expires.
Okay.
And so it is true. A new homeowner would potentially could either take over the loan, or we could reflect the true value of the solar system in the sale price. A study done by Zillow not long ago showed that an average increase in resale value in Florida was 4.6%.
Because of solar.
If you have solar on your roof, right? So that is a real tangible value. Real estate agents and folks in the real estate industry would serve themselves well by understanding that increase in value and communicating it to the new buyers.
I mean, I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to know all the ins and outs of the detail of the workings, but common sense tells you if you have solar panels, you're going to have less power issues.
Sure.
And you're going to save money over the long haul, or the longer haul. Not, I mean, 7 years is not a long time anymore, okay? Because time seems to be flying by. Just saying.
Mr. Homeowner, would you like to buy a house that doesn't have an electricity bill? I mean, that's a pretty good selling point.
Yeah, that is. I mean, I remember.
And there's your immediate gratification.
You know, you talk about how long you've been in it, and most people say, yeah, it didn't exist then. But I could tell you right now, 20-something years ago, I went to my friend's house in Rockledge, and he had it. And he had a little shed in the back where he collected the power,
Wow.
okay, and sold it back, okay. But he never got an electric bill. He whatever system he had, and he had like a shed with all these. Remember, we're going back over 20 years, so I'm sure the technology is a little different today.
A little bit better.
Okay, but it was so interesting to see, and he lived on a canal or maybe a stream, whatever. So he had solar panels, he had a wind turbine, and something in the water. So he was selling back a ton back to whatever company is up there. I don't know if it's up here now. And he was super happy. He said it was probably the best thing he ever did. And that was probably, I'm going to guess, 10 times more than it is today. Okay? And probably 5 times less efficient, if not 20 times less efficient.
Right.
And technology is constantly changing. Okay, how do people find you? You have a website?
Yeah, sailfishsolar.com.
And a phone number, which is on the screen, because I'm not going to put you under the gun there. Most of us don't remember our numbers. Everybody, the philosophy for me is, one, as things come more on the market, you can find some of the stuff at big box stores or specialty stores. This, in my opinion, is not a DIY project. DIY projects, like I always tell you guys, it will always cost you 5 times more in the long run and 10 times more in frustration. Use a professional. Check them out. Give them a call. They'll give you more details than I could possibly talk about on the air. Mike, thank you so much for coming
Okay,
on.
thank you. Thanks for having me.
Everybody, check them out. We'll be right back.